Yes, I think that those suttas where the Buddha talks about death and uses it as part of his teaching are quite interesting, are really interesting actually. That when he's talking to monks, he doesn't have to convince them that death is coming. When he's talking to King Pasenadi, he's talking to somebody who is very invested in worldly power and success, who's done a lot to get success and power and control and wealth. And so he gives him a very vivid image of these huge mountains crushing everything in their path, all converging on him. And he doesn't see them, he doesn't know when they're going to arrive, but they're coming. They're actively rushing towards him here and now. And he can't escape wherever he goes. Those mountains are zeroing in on him. And so that's an image of some kind of annihilating power hurtling towards you. So what he's doing is the Buddha is using his skill in vivid images and similes to evoke something for King Pasenadi, to make death real to him, or help him to make death real to himself. And the king says, well, in that case, running around and conquering other people and accumulating wealth is a pointless thing to do. So what I need to do is make merit and purify the mind, and so on. So he decides for himself. So the Buddha's not telling him what he should choose. And so that's a potential teaching for anyone, but each person has to come up with their own answer. The Buddha doesn't tell you what to decide to do, given that death is hurtling towards you, but to take it really personally, that death really is coming for you, and that you've got very little time left. You don't know how much time you've got left, but however long it is, it's little. And whereas when he's talking to monks, for example, the most interesting sutta is the one where he says that the way a monk makes a lot of mindfulness of death, makes much of mindfulness of death, is that every in-breath he's aware of death, and every out-breath he's aware of death. And that's interesting, at least in the first place, because the in-breath and the out-breath are in themselves the opposite of death. That they're the sign of life, they're the manifestation of life. That what we have here is a temporarily animated corpse, here and now, and this body endowed with consciousness. That's a relatively abstract conceptual level of talking about experience. And but this body endowed with consciousness is always a corpse that happens to still have consciousness attached to it. And but when you are aware of death with each in and out breath, that's quite an intense undertaking, and one only can move to that and to take death that personally, and really take it personally, by getting beyond death-inspiring anxiety, and for most of us nowadays in the West, potentially nihilism and despair, or a sense of emptiness and hopelessness. And so one needs to have something centered and concrete in one's life that's not there because of desperation and the project of creating an identity or securing refuge and safety in mind-made things. One needs to have reached real stability and development before one can take death that personally, that one is not subject to nihilism, which is the danger in practicing mindfulness of death, anxiety and nihilism. So the first time that I really did it, it was using imagination. I was flying from Melbourne to Singapore on an airplane, and I decided to practice mindfulness of death because it was really boring 10 hours. So I did it for many, many hours, and what I did was to imagine as vividly as possible. This was very early in my time as a monk, so I was very raw in meditation. As vividly as possible, the plain skin dissolving, disappearing, and myself moving at 500 kilometers an hour, 33 meters up, and then plunging to earth. and to really make that a very, very concrete imagined experience using visualization. And the result of that was that tremendous anxiety, and I had a acute case of the hives, of all these little itching pustules that suddenly came up all over my head. And so the next week or two in Singapore, I was scratching and so on. That was a good side effect. But that was interesting to see how much anxiety came in doing just a fanciful little imagination exercise. And the process of development of mindfulness of death has to get beyond anxiety by becoming really familiar with anxiety and fear until it assumes more and more its proper dimensions. Because initially anxiety and fear are hugely inflated because we've been avoiding them. As long as we avoid these things, then they'll seem to be much, much bigger than they really are. When you see them in something like their true dimensions, then you can move beyond them, beyond their power. But as long as you allow them to have this inflated intensity and power, then they just stand in your way all the time.